okay, this whole idea of the Holy of Holies. We've been through this before, but this ties in perfect. What goes on behind the veil? What's going on? Well, behind the veil, this whole idea of God saying there's a mercy seat. Let's go back to Romans 3. Because in Romans 3, it gets back to this whole idea of righteousness. There's a veil there. Nobody's righteous. No one can pass through the veil except the high priest. So in Romans 3:23, it says, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Then it says, being justified freely by his grace through the redemption that's in Christ Jesus. Okay, when you read that verse, what does it say to you? What does it mean? Justified not by your faith. Notice it doesn't say that. It says justified freely by the redemption. Through the redemption by his grace. So you're justified by the grace of God through what Jesus Christ has accomplished for your redemption. What is that? What did he do to accomplish redemption? He did what? All right, so death. Why was it important for him to die? The wages of... Now, to who? Guess what's happening in the Holy of Holies? The high priest. In the inner court, the animals are slaughtered, the blood is drained. The sacrifices from which they get the blood have to be perfect. They can't have any three-legged sheep and, all this weird stuff. They got to be unblemished. They take the blood. One guy that represents the nation goes into the Holy of Holies with a pitcher or a platter full of blood. All right? Think of Romans 3:23 and 24. There's something here where God justifies you through redemption in Christ that ties to this Holy of Holies with blood being brought in. So far, so good? Now look at what happens in verse 25. Jesus Christ, redemption, is the one that God set forth to be a propitiation, the mercy seat. And how does he do it, Julian? By what? By blood. So Jesus Christ is our mercy seat by his blood through our trust in his blood. To do what? To demonstrate Yahweh Sitkanu, his righteousness, that he is righteous and just to justify you. Why? Because he said the payment for your sin is death. But that payment is what you owe him, and he won't forgive you for it. You're going to have to pay for it. We die physically. But now he's saying to be released from the penalty of sin, you have to give me an offering for your sin. And the offering you give can't be your life, because your life isn't worth anything to me. You're a sinner. Offering yourself won't help. So what you have to offer is, he sets up the instructions in Exodus and Leviticus, this perfect sacrificial system where you go into where he resides, the Holy of Holies. In the ark, he's the Shekinah glory. So you have, and well, let's keep going. So it says to demonstrate, here it says, because in his forbearance God has passed over the sins that were previously committed. What's he talking about? When 1 Corinthians 13 says, everybody likes to say love is patient, love is kind. The word there for patient in the Greek is what? Long-suffering, forbearing. So God is long-suffering towards you. You know what he means by that? He sees all your warts and he's okay with it. He sees all your issues and he's okay with it because he loves you.
So is this like the Passover form of sense? Like he's seen
No, he's giving a picture here, really, of the Passover, because what he's talking about here, he's speaking in Romans, but he's talking through the idea of the mercy seat in the Holy of Holies, and he's relating it to Passover, where by the blood of a perfect animal on the lentils, God could pass over. The angel of death can't get in, and he's going to pass over. But they aren't completely forgiven. They're temporary. It's a temporary Passover. That's why they had to do this system over and over and over again, because it says in Hebrews, the blood of goats and lambs can never take away sin, right? But it's a continual process. So people, unfortunately, they get caught in a ritual, just like we do in church. I remember going, serving in Paradigm, you know, I understand, it's okay. We come in every week and the leaders will go over the ritual. All right, remember, you got this door tonight. Remember, have a smile on your face. Remember, be nice to people. You know, we go through all that stuff again, right? And when you go in and you're part of a team, you're like, here we go again. Follow the rules, do this and that. It's necessary because people are people and we forget and we treat people poorly and then we feel guilty over it. Well, they get caught in the ritual system too here. Matter of fact, bear with me a minute because I'm sorry to keep doing this to you, but I just want to keep making my point. Isaiah chapter 1, God actually says that. I love the way he tells them he's actually weary of it. Tell me when you're at Isaiah chapter 1. Megan, read verse 11.
The multitude of your sacrifices, what are they to me, says the Lord? I have more than enough burnt offerings of rams and the fattened animals. I have no pleasure in the blood of bulls and lambs.
What?
That would suck if that's what you depend on.
What? Wait a minute. I've been doing this faithfully for years. And he's looking at me going, I'm getting sick of this, guys. I have absolutely no pleasure in that blood. Excuse me? Julian, read verse 12.
When you come to appear before me, who has required of you this trampling of my courts?
Keep going.
Bring no more vain offerings. Incense is an abomination to me. New moon and Sabbath and the calling of convocations. Do not endure iniquity and solemn assembly.
All right, guess what he's saying? He's saying the same thing with David. David said, I'm committing iniquity and my bones are heavy, so I have to come to the Lord for refreshment. The only way for this to be solved for me is I have to come to my Father and tell him. In Isaiah 1, he's saying, nobody's coming to me. You guys keep sacrificing. You bring a bunch of blood. I know who you are. I know what you've been doing. Sleeping around, sinning, cheating, stealing, lying. That's what he's saying. He's saying, don't do this anymore. I don't want it.
My bad, I was right about that first verse we skipped over. He's literally equating the entire nation of Israel to Sodom and Gomorrah. It's like a tone for
Yeah, we think we're so good, and we look at these things and we think, life is good. Think about marriage. You guys have been married long enough now. Jace is starting to grow up. He keeps you busy. You told me once, man, I missed the time I had with Garrett, right? I used to have time with Garrett. Now life's busy, right? Wait till you have 2. Wait till you have 3. I mean, it's like crazy. And it's no different from knowing God. Just like in Revelation, it says, you know, you do all this stuff, but you've lost your first love. You don't know me anymore. The sacrificial system is a picture for those who are in love with God, and they do it for him because God says, you know how to get close to me because I'm holy? You can still get close to me. Come to me this way, and I delight in it. I love it. People are like, well, nobody knows. I slept with my neighbor's wife last night, but as long as I bring the blood, I'm okay. You know, I'll just go through the motions. God goes, you don't think I see that? You're making me sick. Does this make sense?
So like the attitude here is like the people that are doing the rituals, it's like it's about them and just make sure that they're checking their boxes.
Old Testament, New Testament, same. Nothing's different, right? It's all the same. We're body, soul, spirit. In the soul, nobody can see what we're doing except God, and he knows. He set this system up, though, for him so you can get close to him. So in Romans 3, when it says, in verse 26, the reason he passes over sins, the reason his Son is his mercy seat by his blood, is so he can demonstrate that he's right. Now you can tie verse 24 to verse 26, because the end of 26 says the way he's right is that he can justify and be the justifier of the one who has faith in Jesus. Because in verse 24, it says the way you're justified has nothing to do with you. It's by his grace in what Jesus does. So God's saying he's right because you're trusting in the one thing that I think is worth it to me to forgive sin. That's what's going on in verse 26. It ties back.
Is that like like I've asked you, what guarantees your salvation when he's the justifier, like it's all on him, he's the one who guarantees.
It's him. It's him. He owns you. You belong to him now. And he lives in you. And you can't lose him. And he drives you crazy. So you got Romans 3:23 to 26. To so satisfy his holiness that his wrath is removed. So this idea of the propitiation, the blood of Christ, so satisfied the Father that now his wrath is gone. And now he's kind. It's like, whoa, what caused the change? God in the Old Testament, he's so cruel, he's so mean. Are you kidding me? He's holy. Now what happens is, though, by the blood of Christ, he goes, Jesus on the cross goes, hey, Dad, it's finished. What's finished? What did Jesus finish? Okay, but what did the payment accomplish? Huh?
Justice.
And what justice are we talking about? Satisfying God's holiness. God is now satisfied. Payment's been made, and now his holiness is available. It is not available until the perfect blood is shed for sin. Now that the payment's made, Romans 6:23 is fulfilled, where it says that the wages of sin is death. Jesus pays the wages to the Father. The Father goes, now people can be at peace because I'm at peace. Now there's a difference between sin and sins. The sin of the world, the sin in this world has been paid for. Satan's head has been crushed because now God has won. Satan can't win. He's a loser. It's over. This is the movement from justification to sanctification. Now, anyone who trusts Christ, is not liable to the penalty. They can't go to hell. It's not possible. Now it's about Satan trying to exert his power to influence you to be drawn away from the Son by your soul through what you see and the pleasures and desires you have that are in conflict with the Bible. That's the battle. That's Galatians 5. Flesh and blood. There's a battle of flesh and blood going on within Christians because we're a snow-covered dung ball. Because that war is going to happen until we die. Does this make sense? It's awesome. This is what's happening. So God gets satisfied. So what's going on here? Well, when Paul talks to this, you got to remember, he's talking to a church in Rome that's mainly Greeks. This is a church that isn't part of his missionary planting. He didn't plant the church in Rome. This is like a house church, and it's a mixture of Greeks and Jews, but the whole culture around Rome is Greek. There is no Jewish influence. And he's explaining the Old Testament Ark of the Covenant to these guys. Just think about how crazy this is. You think we have trouble understanding this. They're sitting there going, what are you talking about, right? If you ever watch the movies for the Greek gods, Hercules, you watch the Battle in Troy and all that stuff, the gods are always messing with people. And the goal is to try to appease them by earning their favor. So you do things to try to appease them, right? But what's happening in the Bible, this idea of satisfying God, this propitiation, never has anything to do with your efforts. Has absolutely, you're not even in the picture. It has to do with him dealing with your sin. Because when he deals with your sin, now he's satisfied and now he can show mercy. He acts so that he can now be merciful when you trust him by removing guilt and dismissing sin. He does everything. It's available. This is what it means in Romans 3:24 when it says, being freely justified by his grace. It doesn't mean everybody's justified. It means justification is free because you don't do anything. And it's through his grace, and then it's through the redemption in Christ. The work is done by Christ so that the grace of God can be made shown to you. He demonstrates it on the cross. So now, if you want it, if you want to trust him, you can have the God of peace living in your spirit.
So when it says, as propitiation by his blood to be received by faith, what's the part that you're receiving? Is it the gift of grace that you're receiving?
You're like, think about Abraham. Think about Abram in Genesis 15. When it says there that Abraham believed God and it was credited to him for righteousness, right? So what you have is Paul explaining to the church in Rome, post-crucifixion, post-resurrection, what it all means by tying it back to the Jewish sacrificial system, saying when you trust in what God is giving you by trusting him, not yourself, but actually trusting in his character that what he says is true, you're justified.
Okay.
Think about again a marriage. What a terrible marriage it would be to say, you know how I decide how close I am to you? How many checks you've been able to get done on my list of things that need to be done today. Right? You know, even when you're as a husband and wife, you're having a bad day and you're not getting along, you stay in the house. Why do you stay in the house? Well, I have to. I don't have anywhere to go. Right? Is that why? Because you know what you did. You made a covenant. You looked in that person's eyes and you said, it doesn't matter how bad it gets. It doesn't matter to me. But I'm a person. I can get upset. But guess what? I trust in you and you trust in me. And no matter what happens between us, we're not leaving each other. It's exactly what it is with justification. I trust in the person and what God has shown me, even in the Old Testament. And by trusting in what Jesus Christ accomplished now as he revealed himself, God says, I'm never leaving you. And you can't get away because you mean it. In your soul, you've trusted in me and now I live in you. Does that make sense? It's not trusting in yourself. This is so hard, but it's so simple. Children have no problem with this. No problem. They look at their dad and they go, okay, Dad, right? Pigs fly? Okay. Then they get to be older. Hey, I learned in science today, pigs don't fly, Dad. What were you talking about, right? In the Old Testament, the word there, let's go to Exodus 25 and look inside the Holy of Holies now. Because remember, we're equating this idea of who you are as a person with the outer court, your body that encloses it, the inner court, where preparations are made for the sacrifice you're going to give, and then the Holy of Holies, where the blood is brought in. Right? Okay, Exodus 25, verse 17, it says, you shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2.5 cubits shall be its length, and 1.5 cubits its width. All right, this is the lid that's on the ark. You shall make 2 cherubim of gold. Of hammered work you shall make them at the 2 ends of the mercy seat. 1 cherub at one end, the other cherub at the other end. You shall make the cherubim at the 2 ends of it, one piece with the mercy seat. So this is an integrated piece with cherubim. Mercedes talked about the veil having the image or pattern of a cherubim. Now you have real cherubim made of gold that are integrated into the lid on top of the ark. The cherubim, now it describes how he wants them to be made. They stretch out their wings, covering the mercy seat with their wings, and they shall face one another, faces of them toward the mercy seat. So they're like this. Here's the lid. There's one on each end. They're looking down on the mercy seat with their wings out. So far, so good? Then it says, you shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark, and in the ark you put the testimony that I will give you. So what's the testimony? The law. Inside the ark is the law. You put it in there, and then it says, I will meet with you and speak with you from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubim on the ark of the testimony, all the things I will command you. So look what's happening. In Romans 3, God calls Christ, or Paul calls Christ, the mercy seat, propitiation. You've got the 10 Commandments inside the ark. You've got Jesus Christ, the lid, and the Father's meeting with them inside the Holy of Holies. The Father shows up with the mercy seat. But why does Christ have to be between the law and God? Jesus fulfills the law, and we can't approach God based on the law. So it's only the law that reveals your sin. It's Christ that gives grace. So it's talking here in Exodus about Jesus as the lid that covers the ark that causes God the Father to show up. He shows up, but never in the inner court, never in the outer court, only in the Holy of Holies. Colossians 1, 26, 27. It's Christ in you, the lid, that brings the Father's presence into your life because he lives in the Holy of Holies. You follow me? I know I'm it's crazy in that. And you were going to do your thing tonight. So that's what it looks like. You got the mercy seat, Shekinah glory above, the cherubim. Mercedes already explained that. They're guarding the holiness of God, right? The Shekinah glory, God himself is above it. The 10 Commandments are inside. And guess what's happening? The cherubim are bowing down because what happens next, and we'll look at this next week. I'll do a little of this next week. The high priest comes in with the blood. And when he sprinkles the blood on the mercy seat, the sins are forgiven. The sins aren't forgiven until the blood is sprinkled on there. That's Romans 3:24. Propitiation by his blood. So because when you come to Christ and trust him, God sees the blood of his Son in you. You're washed, you know that phrase, washed in the blood? You're covered by his blood. So your position with him is perfect and he lives in you. This is a perfect picture of who you are on the inside.